First, the European Medicines Agency, then the European Banking Authority. These major bodies are on their way to Amsterdam and Paris. Together they employ around 1,000 people in London. The EMA alone attracts around 40,000 business visits each year, supporting an ecosystem of hotels, taxis and restaurants. And it'll be taking its $380 million budget with it. These, the first concrete signs of Brexit as the UK prepares to leave the European Union. The beginning of what some are already calling Brexodus. And it's not just the agencies that are pulling out. Thousands of jobs in the financial services industry are likely to move out as well. The City UK is the industry-led body for UK-based financial and professional services. Their chief executive says the move was inevitable, but it's not over for London.
The important thing to think about when you look at agencies such as the European Banking Authority moving is that what drew them to London in the first place was that London is the leading international financial centre. Just because they're leaving London doesn't stop London being the leading international financial centre. So whilst obviously that's not something that we welcome, it's something that was inevitable once Brexit happened.
For the City UK, the worst-case scenario, a return to World Trade Organization rules, would have serious economic consequences.
In those circumstances, it's about 75,000 jobs out of the 2.2 million that exist in the UK in our industry, and about £8 to £10 billion worth of tax. That's the equivalent of about 300,000 health workers' salaries. And it's around £20 billion of economic activity.
From the IMF to the OECD and the World Trade Organization, most of the world sees Brexit as damaging to the UK economy and its reputation. And now the government here is putting its efforts into minimising that damage, with compromises in its negotiations and the blurring of several red lines.
For some, the outlook is rather positive. EU industry bodies may move on, but new arrivals are seen as an economic and reputational vote of confidence.
I actually am more sceptical of this idea that services jobs are automatically going to go. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities to develop businesses in the UK, and we see that simply by the sheer scale of investment from new companies coming in, particularly in the artificial intelligence. You see Google, you see the whole fintech area genuinely taking off. And these are people who don't have to be here. Google does not have to be here.
So, as Brexit negotiations enter an all-important second phase, there's still much to be hammered out. But the message from the inside is clear. While there's a lot at stake, London remains open for business. Jessica Omari for TRT World.
So let's stay in London now, and joining me from there is economist Vicky Pryce. She's a board member at the Centre for Economics and Business Research. Welcome back to Money Talks, Vicky. Great to have you as always. Vicky, are you more or less optimistic now than at the start of 2017 that the UK will reach a favourable trade deal with the EU by October?
Well, the timing is all important. We don't know how soon we'll be able to have those trade negotiations, in fact, started. Yes, we've got the OK in December from the Europeans that we can move to the next stage. But there is quite a lot to be discussed on the transition phase first, which we now hear is actually not going to last for as long as 2 years, might actually last less. And then, of course, the trade agreement that we may have at the end it still remains quite uncertain. So there's still a lot of pessimism about achieving exactly what the UK government seems to want at the end of the day, particularly in the service sector, given that services are such an important part of the economy. Financial sector, of course, has been worried for quite some time. And particularly the issue of passporting hasn't been resolved yet. In other words, whether any organisation that establishes itself in one part of the EU at present, of course, can operate anywhere across the continent. Will that apply for the UK too in the future, or is it something we're going to have to negotiate hard and something we may have to pay quite a lot of money to the EU for? Loads of uncertainties there. They affect particular parts of the financial sector more, and that, of course, has been subject to huge lobbying from the financial sector here in the UK, trying to get the best deal, because unfortunately WTO rules and agreements so far very rarely cover services.
Vicky, Prime Minister Theresa May goes into phase 2 in a much weaker position than she did into phase 1, which wasn't that strong to begin with. Do you think she's going to survive phase 2?
Well, that's again a very interesting question. There are people being asked on the radio all the time, how many more Christmases is she like to have as Prime Minister? I think the Conservative Party wants her to stay because the alternative is worse, in the sense that if there is a change in leadership, then that might trigger a new election, and they're very fearful, of course, that the Labour Party might sneak in, either by itself or in a coalition with others. So that's not a particularly good prospect. Or that if she were to leave, there may well be some Brexit wars again, because a number of people in the cabinet that she heads at present are very ardent pro-Brexiteers, and they will seize the opportunity to get to power and perhaps change the course, despite any agreement that may have been made so far.
Economist Vicky Pryce, thank you ever so much.